Cool. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for your patience. I was in the car. So, Roberta, you're right on time because I just walked in the house. Um, all right, we're excited to have Kim tonight. If you haven't seen all that she's been doing, she does a lot of really, really fun trips, and she's been getting a lot of questions about some of her trips, solo, how she finds these trips, groups that she goes with, so on and so forth. So we thought it would be fun to just hop on, do this call for the folks that could join us and the recording for those that can't. And she's got a lot of fun pictures to share with us too. So take it away, Kim.
Awesome. Yeah. So thanks you guys for joining and anyone who's watching the recording. Happy to take like questions either on the Facebook page or just message me or I'll see you on a ride. I've already started to talk to some people on rides and answer questions on my own Facebook posts, but just figured this would be a kind of a cool way to share some things and also share knowledge because one of the things that I've heard is it can seem very overwhelming when you're trying to think about what kind of trip, what company to go with, and all of the things. So I definitely can't speak to every tour or every company, but I definitely can speak to a lot and kind of just maybe help you think about like what to consider, what to look for, those types of things. So in terms of an agenda, I'll talk about the types of trips I've taken, some ideas on how to choose a trip, assorted tips. I wasn't sure what to call this, but I was like, yeah, these are things that you may not know and would be helpful to know. And then I put in a page that's got a link, that's got a bunch of links to companies that I have either used or ones that I have considered using or stumbled across within my research that I would say that I would probably consider in the future. There's probably a lot more, but at least as a start. So starting off just with some basics on types of trips that I have done. So where it all started is I took a trip to Mallorca, Spain, and this was with a company when I was doing triathlons. I used Endurance Nation, and they at the time had just started branching out into doing some kind of training camp types of trips. So that's one of the types of trips that I'll talk about is more like training camp. So it's a little more intense. You're focusing a little more on mileage, maybe hitting certain zones, doing some epic climbs, things like that. I would say there was also a little less structure outside of the ride. So, it was definitely a little more hardcore. I think I did it in 2019, which is interesting because I had knee surgery in 2018. So I probably wasn't definitely my strongest in 2019, but it's definitely a great way to start to build some fitness. The cool thing about Mallorca is it's definitely a bucket list location for cycling. I found that there were more bikes than cars, so it was kind of a combination of bikes and tour buses, which was super fun coming down switchback hills with tour bus coming up at you. But it was really beautiful. It was fun. That particular trip was one hotel. So we were at one hotel, and every ride that we did started from the hotel. I think maybe one day we took a bus somewhere to start one of the rides, but you'll see once we get into the considerations, that's something that you can choose whether you want to do a tour that is in one hotel and you just ride from there, or a trip that keeps moving. So speaking of keeping moving, another trip that I've done two Tour de France trips. So obviously this is a very different trip than the other one, where this is obviously based on the race, right? So this would only be of interest to someone who's a huge fan of pro cycling, which I am. If you have ever or watched the Tour de France, it's pretty epic, but when you see it in person, it's even more epic. Like I don't even know how they do it, and I've seen them do it. So I did this with Moo Cycling. It's a company out of Australia. So they basically get you incredible access to the races that you can't get I mean, you can go be a spectator anywhere along the roadside for any of these races and it's free, but you're really getting access. It's pretty structured just because of the nature of how the rides and the tour goes because let's see, yeah, once you're not necessarily following because you're actually leading. You're in front of the pros by, I don't know, hours. So you're getting to ride parts of the course, the actual Tour de France course each day. So some days we would ride from the start line, other days we'd ride like a couple climbs, another day we'd ride through the finish line. So you're riding across the finish line of the Tour de France, that's pretty damn cool. So it was a once in a lifetime opportunity that I did twice. I did it the second time because they started from Italy, and I was like, oh, I kind of want to go to Italy. The Tour de France is cool. Like, so yeah, I'll do it again. Thanks for starting in Italy. So it was the first time they had ever started the tour in Italy, so it's kind of cool. So for me, I think and I did want to go to France. So that's why I went the first year too. So it's kind of like I have a mental checklist of things I want to do and see. France, check that off. Italy, check that off. Tour de France, checked it off twice. But like I said, it was an amazing experience. The picture on the left there, we climbed the Tourmalet, which is one of those epic climbs that they frequently do in the tour. That honestly, I wasn't sure I was going to make it. It's a very long climb, and I'm not a good climber, so it took a long time. Another type of trip, which is new to me, I just did this for the first time last year. And people are like, oh, that's interesting. So this is a cruise. So this company, Santana Adventures, actually started off as a tandem company, and then they've since branched out into so they all of their cruises have all kinds of bikes. So they have tandems, they also have regular road bikes, and they also have e-bikes. So this was my first cruise ever. I had never been on any kind of cruise. This was a smaller ship, about 200 people. I also did a pre-tour. So we basically started in Athens and did the Greek Isles, which is a really good way to see the Greek Isles because otherwise, if you're taking ferries and cars and all other kinds of modes of transportation, you spend a lot of time traveling, getting from one island to the next. This way was cool. We would travel at night. The ship would move. We'd wake up on a different island. They would give us the routes, give us all the information. We would ride. We'd stop at a bakery. Um, so this was a little bit different in the sense that the rides were self-guided, so they'd give you the routes, but there's 200 people, so generally you'd find other people that wanted to do the distance that you wanted to do, maybe the pace you wanted to do. So they had multiple options for different distances. There was they called a small, medium, and large. So you could pick which route you wanted to do for the day. Um, I would say the most stressful thing about this was making sure you don't miss the boat. Like, so I always had to factor that into my decision. Like, okay, if the ride is this long and this hilly and I do average this pace, am I at risk if I get a flat tire or anything happens? Am I going to miss the boat? So I was super, super conservative about making sure I was back on the boat. The thing that I loved about it was that you're in one location. You're sleeping in one location, but you're seeing multiple locations. So you don't have to pack every day, which for me was a lot of fun. It's like you live on the boat, you live in your room, you don't have to keep moving every day. Whereas the other tours where you're moving, you physically have to move and pack every single day. So I liked that. Um, my note here, it was very structured, but also not. I would say the structure was about missing the boat, but then also it was also a little bit like on your own. Like when you find your people, you ride, you stop at a bakery or not, and then you get back on the boat. So there was a fair amount of structure. I'll pause for a second because I know I can just ramble and talk through everything. But before I get to other types of trips, any questions so far? Anything that I missed or anything you're curious about?
What was
Well,
the cruise ship like? Because if I'm being honest, cruises are a little cringy to me, but this seems like a little more of like an upscale experience, maybe.
yeah, yeah. So because I think you're probably thinking of like the big, huge cruise ships that have
Correct,
thousands of
correct.
people. Like, there's no pool on this ship. There's no like you've got and so basically what this company does is they don't own any boats. They basically charter ships based on the location that they're going to. So they chartered this ship. There's a lot of people that only will do Santana cruises for their cycling vacations. They are that loyal because once you find it and you like it and you're like, oh, this is awesome, you're like hooked forever. So people told me, I had no frame of reference because it was my first cruise. They said this was the worst ship. And the cruise I'm going on next year, people have said it's the best ship. So I guess I'll let you know after that. But it wasn't bad. It just wasn't like super glamorous, I guess. I mean, it was nice. My room, I had a single room. A lot of cruise ships don't have single rooms. This was a challenge. So this one was, that's why I jumped on it because they had single rooms. So I was like, all right, I gotta book this. Um, so if they don't have a single room, they'll either pair you up with someone or you find a friend, or you can pay 60 to 80% more, which is not an option for me. I refuse to do that. Um, so yeah, it definitely wasn't what you're thinking of, but I know what you mean. Is definitely like low key. And I will say the demographic for the cruise, I was probably the youngest at 54. So I would say the average age was probably 65 and up.
There was no partying till 3 a.m. I'm taking it.
I don't know. I mean, there could have been people could have totally been in the bar or the restaurant, but it was not me because I was like, because you're on this schedule, right? It's like you have because dinner was late and dinner the food was very good.
Yeah.
Um, dinner was I think it was every night at 7 or 7:30. So again, like European standards is
Yeah.
later. So like by the time you're done with a 5 course meal, it's 10 o'clock. I'm like, okay, go to bed, get up early enough to get off the boat to ride at 8, whatever. So yeah, no party for me.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks. Any other
Yeah.
questions?
Yeah, Kim, I'm sorry I came on a little late, so thank you for your time and
Yeah.
for sharing all this information. Um, I just took my first like ever solo trip this past February, and it was really I went to St. Lucia to Body
Oh, cool.
Holiday, so
Yeah.
much a very a fitness active place, but very much a spa like atmosphere. And so I'm curious, as again as a solo traveler and cycling. How did you feel about that? Were you always still with a group when you were on the road? Because I don't even ride on the road here in in Connecticut by myself anymore because I just don't feel safe anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say mostly yeah. So the Tour de France I almost got lost, but
Hmm.
that was partially my fault. Well, that's another story for another day. I would say in Greece I did ride alone a little bit more. I would start out with people and then it's always like it's like a Goldilocks situation. These people are too slow, these people are too fast, like these people are doing a different route. These people don't want to stop for a giant donut. How dare they? So I would say Greece was probably where I rode alone, but I didn't really like feel unsafe. I had the route on my Garmin, that usually is pretty good, and I knew there were people like out there. And I'm just such a horrible climber that like I would start out with people and then the first climb they're gone. So that's definitely one of the things to consider.
Okay.
Um, and I'll get into it like on the next trip where you were with the group the entire time. And so that might be one of the decisions. Like, do you want like truly guided, or are you okay with somewhat of self-guided? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, a little
good
bit of
question.
both is
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
Yeah. It's bad enough getting lost here in the States. I can't imagine getting lost in a foreign country on a
Oh
boat.
yeah, and
I'm
you can't even
like,
read the signs.
I would have missed the ship you were talking about. I'm like, oh,
Yeah, that was my fear. Don't miss the boat.
okay. So it
Literally
sounds like you
live.
had a mixed experience and you could kind of yeah, I get the Goldilocks concept too, because I often find myself feeling that way too. So I
Yeah.
get that.
And that's definitely one of the things I'll talk about when I talk about the considerations is just knowing yourself, and sometimes it's trial and error, right? You're like you
Sure.
could do a trip and be like, I am never doing that again. Like and you just hope that it's safe and you have a good time because it is your vacation and it is expensive, so you want to enjoy it. So you have to kind of, I think, understand what works for you, and not go completely off the rails.
Yeah. Well, that's why before I book, I'll call you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love
Or
talking about
Hunter.
vacations. So the trip I just did, was through Exodus Travels. What I actually did is I booked two tours back to back. They happened to be running Porto to Lisbon and Lisbon to the Algarve and back to back weeks. So I was like, well, if I'm gonna go there, like I'm gonna go there. Portugal's a pretty small country, so I was like, well, honestly, I didn't know. I knew I wanted to go to Portugal. I didn't really know what was there except some beautiful scenery. So I didn't really know enough to plan my own trip and figure it out. So I was like, I'm just going to see the whole country while I'm there. And that worked out really well. This was self-guided. My first time with Exodus, they grade their tours like I don't know, they grade it like 1 through 5 or something. Um, so when I was looking at the tours, I I don't know if they posted the speed or I asked. I was like, so what's the average speed? And they're like 8 to 12 miles an hour. And I'm like, can you ride that slow and stay upright? Like that seemed pretty slow, but at that point, like this is where it kind of comes into play. Like make a decision on what's important to you and how you feel you can function. And I'm like, you know what? I don't care. I was sold on this trip for other reasons, so I was like, I can ride slower. It's not like they're asking me to go 18 miles an hour up hills. Like I can ride slower. That's what this is all about. It's about seeing scenery, hanging out with, hopefully you like the people in your tour group. I can live with that. Well, it turns out they were hybrid bikes for the first week and then kind of like hybrid mountain bikes the second week. So the speed didn't seem obnoxiously slow. And then also the second week was also more dirt roads and lots of sand. So it wasn't obnoxiously slow. So the other thing about these tours is they were, I would call, very structured. So you have a guide. The first week we had two guides. We had the lead guide and then what they call in Europe a back marker, which is what we call a sweep in the US. And then we had a driver. So every day we, you know, the night before we would talk about what we're doing tomorrow, what time we have to get up, what time our luggage needs to be downstairs because this is one of those trips where you got to move every day. So okay, everyone, breakfast is from 7 to 8 downstairs, 8:30 on the bikes ready to go. Or this is what we're gonna ride. We're gonna ride at this number of miles. We're gonna stop for coffee. We're gonna stop for lunch. We're gonna stop here, and then we wouldn't get back to the hotel until like 4 o'clock the next day. So you're taking all day to do like a 35-mile ride. And the first day I was like, it was a shock. I was like, why are we stopping again? Why are we stopping for so long? And now we have lunch, and now wait, now we're stopping again. Like day two, I was like, okay, cool. I can live with this. So you just adapt. And that's one of those things where if you're I think I've probably gone full spectrum from back when I did triathlons, where you'd ride and you'd stop for fluids if you needed to. You did not stop for a coffee stop. Like that was not a thing. I discovered that in Mallorca. So I've come full swing to now. I did a ride this weekend and they stopped at a bakery to regroup, but did not stop for food, and I was appalled. I was like, so again, like what do you like? What can you deal with? And what are your priorities? So that that kind of sets the groundwork for understanding kind of how to choose a trip. But I'll pause again. Any other questions about any of that, which I might answer in the next few slides, but
I just have a question about the different companies. How did you learn about them? Or you sort of just you went online, sounded good, I'll go for it? Or did you actually, because that is sort of a leap of faith, like not really knowing. Although now you're a veteran, so you're very flexible, which is great. Um, it's like,
Yeah, I mean the only one I had any experience was Endurance Nation, that first Mallorca trip. And I mean they were just kind of like the facilitator. The actual bike leads was a different company. So yeah, I mean it's really just online research um and reviews. Hopefully they're honest. I always take those with a grain of salt, like or how
right,
many are paid. I like to see
right.
a good number of
Who's
them.
writing
And
it?
now with AI, it's probably easier, right? You can probably look to see if there's any hidden complaints anywhere lurking. But yeah, it's definitely a leap of faith. You're like you're giving thousands of dollars to
Hmm.
someone,
Yeah.
and the cruise is like prepaid a year in advance because they have to pay the charter, right? So Just
Yeah.
and also hope that your credit card is going to support you if anything goes wrong.
Thank you.
Yeah. So in terms of consideration, so everyone is going to have different priorities, right? So you prioritize based on what's most important. Also determine what you're more flexible on. So for me, what the very top of the list is like location. Where do I want to go next? I have a mental list, somewhat prioritized, of countries that I want to see. I've seen, like, I kind of phrase it as if I don't see, like, say, Italy before I die, I mean, I'll be dead, so I won't know, but I would be mad. My, whatever happens to me afterwards would be mad. Like, you didn't go to Italy, you know? So I'm trying to see the places that I really want to see. Everything else, it becomes gravy. It's like, yeah, I'd like to see that, but, whatever. So that's one of the top things for me. So I will say though, if an opportunity comes up, that list can shift. Like I knew I wanted to see Greece. Wasn't probably my, third or fourth choice, but the cruise popped up and I saw it and I was like, this sounds like a really cool trip. And it literally sold out in an hour. So like you so I had to jump on it. And I think they ended up putting a second week on after that because it was so popular. So if an opportunity like that comes up, like those cruises, they don't have like a set schedule like the other companies. They go where they want, when they feel like it, right? Or maybe like if people ask, hey, I really want to go to Australia, can you do that cruise again? If they get requests, I don't know how they figure it out. The guy's a little eclectic, so but they run a great tour. So when those things pop up, I jump on them.
Kim,
I
one
think,
question.
yeah.
How did you know about it then? If you like, were you just happened to be scrolling on the internet that day and
Yeah, I
arrows?
think I was probably searching for something else. And
Okay.
that's how I found a lot of it. I stumbled across it and then I got on their email list. And man, I will say their marketing is top notch. When they start, they'll send out like a teaser email and then they send out what they call a photographic itinerary. I don't know who their photographer is, but he needs a raise. It's just it makes it's amazing. So it's like every location looks great. I want to go on every single cruise now, but I'm like, okay, I'm not retired yet. So yeah, so I just stumbled across it. Now I'm on their email list. So
Okay. Thank you.
they tempt me all the time, which is how I signed up for the other cruise that I'm doing next year that has repeat countries and places I didn't even want to know I wanted to go until I saw it. So um, in terms of, and I talked a little bit about this, like the style, right? Do you want a training camp? Do you want like some hardcore fitness building, or do you want to do some sightseeing and you don't care how fast you go, or maybe something in between? Do you want to do something race specific? That's probably a big consideration in terms of alternatives for not riding. So either if you are with a partner that doesn't ride, some companies have that where they'll do day trips to see sights for the non-riding person. Some of the Exodus and I think some other companies have like just active trips where it'll be hiking and biking or hiking, biking, kayaking or whatever. So it's not doesn't necessarily have to be a solely biking trip. Another thing to consider is what kind of terrain do you want to ride? They have mountain biking trips, road gravel. My reading isn't my best skill. So I knew that there were like some dirt roads on this Exodus trip, but I don't think I realized how much. And I really, really liked that. I was like, okay, I love the gravel roads, and you're riding along the coast on these beautiful dirt roads. Like I was like, it doesn't get better than this. So that's another consideration. If you're not comfortable on a mountain bike or a gravel bike, then you'll probably want to stick to a road ride. So that's a consideration. Amount of structure, right? I would say the Mallorca trip was not, the riding was very structured, but then otherwise it was kind of like a free for all, like, oh, who's going for drinks? Maybe a couple of arranged dinners, but you had more time on your own. Um, versus Exodus, where like literally everything was taken care of. They even did like a pool of money up front that covered your lunches. So you didn't even have to worry about that. They just ordered a lunch for the lunch stop. So like the biggest decision I had to make for 2 weeks was what pastry to get. And maybe what dinner, what did I want for dinner? Because they organized the dinners too. That was on your own money, but they organized it. So that was fantastic. So that was something that I learned, like, all right, so I've done trips where I've booked maybe like I did an Italy pre-tour on my own. That was a lot of work of planning to figure out the hotels, how to get from point A to point B. It is mentally draining, and it's like it's nice when you're on vacation to just like my job was to get up and ride and not think. So I liked that. Um, do you want all inclusive or do you want self-guided? I haven't, the closest I came to self-guided was the cruise. So that's something like if you're comfortable with that, that will probably save you money if that's further on the list. But if you want something a little more budget friendly, then self-guided might be the way to go. I believe some of the self-guided companies, they still have like if you're going from point A to B to C to B, whatever, they still have staff that move your stuff. So, you still drop your luggage, the van will get you to and get it to the next hotel. But the riding is still on your own and all of that other stuff. So it just depends on what your preferences are. One location versus moving. That also depends on how much you want to see and what you're comfortable with. If you don't mind packing every day, and it's a pain in the ass, but I mean, it's kind of like you got to do it unless you're on the cruise. So, um, other travelers, now you may not necessarily know this, but some like I found that Santana has a Facebook group, so you can kind of ask people. Exodus also has a Facebook group, so you can kind of pick the brains. It's like, hey, anyone ever do this Portugal trip? What did you think of it, or whatever? So, you can kind of get a sense of what the folks are like on both the Exodus trip and the cruise. I was the youngest. I would say the Tour de France trips were maybe a little more mixed. And then the Mallorca training camp, I would say, was probably a little. Well, I was younger, but I think it was a little bit younger. So if that's a consideration, that's good to know. I think I talked about, the mixed activities and do you like boats? Do you like cruises? I mean, I had never been on one. It worked out good. In terms of budget, like I said, if that's a consideration, that any of these decisions may push you one way or the other. I think budget's one of the ones that might push you potentially to self-guided a little bit more. Unfortunately, solo always pays more. So any of the tours you look at, like for the Exodus trips, it's like here's the cost and the single supplement, like $600, $800 or whatever it is for the week. So I think some groups will pair you up if you want. There were other solos on both of my trips. I'm not the type of person who wants to be paired up with a stranger for my vacation for a week in close small quarters, especially on a cruise. So I'm like, here's my $600. Thank you. I will take the room to myself. And then in terms of budget, just like I said, reading isn't my greatest skill, but yeah, just make sure that you're aware of what's included and not included. Most of these tours do not include airfare. Some will include the bike rental, like Trek, obviously. Trek tours have Trek bikes, and then to what level or meals included. It'll usually say on you know, on the trip details. I think I talked a little bit on your own, like your preference. How much control do you want? Are you kind of go with the flow, or you manage every detail type of person, or somewhere in between? Um, I was surprised, like with the Portugal trip, you didn't even have control over your own food. They had a buffet for lunch of whatever they ordered for the day, and hopefully, if you're not too picky. I'm a fairly picky eater, but I did not starve, so that was good. Um, in terms of planning, so your ideal timing will depend on you, on your schedule when you have vacation time. If you're a teacher, obviously, maybe then you only can go on school vacations. Like that'll be a limiter. But then, so like I mentioned with the cruises, they go when they go, and you go when they go. Other tours run almost year round, every other week, every month or whatever. So you can kind of pick the dates, just kind of look at again your schedule and maybe when the best weather is and go from there. I usually book the trip, then the flights, because usually I'm booking the tours out so far in advance. Like I can't even book the flight for my next cruise for another like 4 months because I'm not far out from it. So And then in terms of training, you'll obviously, if you need to, train for what you're planning on riding. So before I did those Tour de France trips, I hate climbing, but I was training for climbing because I knew I was going to be in the Pyrenees. So the Portugal trip, I was like, I can ride 35 miles slowly, so didn't really need any training for that. So that's just one thing to kind of think about your current fitness and where it needs to be for the trip. And this is me, but my bike choice is 100% rent. I will not ship my bike, fly with my bike. My bike is precious cargo. I don't trust anybody. And honestly, like I bring my saddle. I have a spare saddle of the same kind I have on all my bikes. I bring the saddle, I bring the pedals. Every bike I've had has been fine. They adjust it for you. Most of the bikes, like the Tour de France bikes, were like they're premium factor bikes. They're nicer probably than the bikes most people ride. So saves you a ton of worry and aggravation. I will admit I have a little PTSD. My second Tour de France trip, they lost my luggage for 5 days. Imagine if that was a bike on a biking trip. Not good. So that is my personal opinion. If you love your bike and don't want to ride anything else, that's totally fine.
Kim, do you
Um,
bring any of your measurements or you just let them do it?
eh, I wing it.
Yeah,
Um,
and
yeah,
it's
I mean,
been
I think
fine.
I think some companies have asked for specific measurements and they've had it dialed in before I got there. I actually the worst was Mallorca. I spent like 3 days like really leaning forward before I was like, yeah, gotta tweak this. But if you're not delayed like I am, it's easy for someone to make an
Yeah.
adjustment.
Yeah. So that's what it's like. It's been a fine experience with that too. You don't
Yeah,
have to like
absolutely.
do
Yep.
all of that stuff. That's good to know.
Yeah.
I can just actually add in, I just did a bike ride in Florida and I really wanted my bike. Not that it's very special, but I just figured like, what would I end up with? And so I just like a word, and part of it's me, my planning, but I still don't have it yet. And so it just like you're having to give a lot of lead time, like having the local bike shop
Right.
at least, t take it apart, pack it, and again, it seemed to get there right on time perfectly. But then the shop you're going to, and then putting it together, and then the
Yeah.
bringing it back to them, and so and even I went to get it last week, and for my local bike shop, and they had spaced out or somehow over, didn't realize it was. Thankfully, it was there, but it was in the back room. So anyway, it's been
Mm,
like probably almost 2 months. And so that's one thing to consider. Also, I didn't realize
mm.
all the expense, like how it adds. I don't even want to add up.
No, yeah,
But
because you're
anyway, I think
paying.
I might try. But I
Mm.
am still like again, I'm not very like I'm not a like this awesome technical rider. Like I do ride 10 miles an hour, but I like my bike, and I just get worried like how will I ride if it's not like something I'm used to. But thank you for bringing that up because it's another perspective.
Yeah, and then yeah, I mean the cost for getting it there, and then also to your point, like, I personally have to pay someone to take it apart and then pay someone to put it back together and then do that again in reverse. So I don't think you're saving any money. I'll gladly, it's maybe $400 to $600 a week, and it depends. And I didn't say this anywhere, I don't think, but most of the tour companies now have e-bike options. So that's also like if you're looking at either the distance or the pace or whatever, like half of my second Portugal group was on e-bikes. So it that doesn't have to be a hurdle either.
Yeah, I've flown with my bikes and it's super stressful. Um, within the States, I flew with my mountain bike to Italy and 0 out of 10 recommend because none, no form of transportation is fit for like an American suitcase, never mind a mountain bike case. We took all public transportation to the
Oh
race
God.
venue, and I'm surprised my husband and I are still together. I got stuck on the train, and it was like the train was going to like Austria, and I was on it, and he was off the train because I couldn't get the bike off fast enough. Um, so on the way back,
Um,
he was like, I'm not doing that again. So we took a bus to like the closest city, and we took one bus to Venice. But even then we're on those little ferry boats, with my mountain bike.
Oh,
So it's
yeah.
like that's another thing I think to consider too is like
Mm.
especially in Europe, I haven't been anywhere else, but like it's not meant for this kind of stuff.
No, no. Even my suitcase is huge. I call it the pink monstrosity because it's hot pink and it weighs
Yeah.
like 60 pounds.
Yeah.
And it's not fit for Europe trains.
Yeah.
So I
So
can
that's
only
like, I
imagine.
mean, within the States, whatever, it's fine. It's stressful. You go to your rental car, that's a Suburban, and you're like good to go. But yeah, if you're
That's a good
traveling
point.
somewhere like
Hmm.
in Europe, it was like, I mean, we laugh about it now, but in the moment, it was
Right.
not very
Oh God, yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
And I had someone to help me. So again, back to the solo aspect of it, like
Right.
I
Oh,
think it
I've
would have
embarrassed
been
myself in front of lots
impossible.
of Italians on the train. So they're like, oh, American.
Oh.
Um, so another thing I have personal experience with, buy travel insurance. It might seem like a good place to cut corners, but I had my 2024 Italy trip. Um, I had to make some modifications. My wife was injured, and then I got COVID, so I had to cut my trip in half. And I had travel insurance. If I didn't, I would have been out like $5,000. So definitely travel insurance. It's worth it. If you don't use it, yeah, it sucks. But if you do use it, it's like, because you don't know what's going to happen, especially when you're booking tours out a year plus in advance. Other thing, again, PTSD from one of my trips, always bring your critical cycling gear on in your carry-on, among other things like extra underwear, contact solution, all of those important things, just in case they lose it for a day or two or whatever. Anything expensive or difficult to replace, like your shoes. You probably don't want to start a cycling trip with new shoes. Um, because the ones you have are probably comfy and broken in, and you don't know what they're going to have in Europe. So I always bring shoes, helmet, pedals, at least one kit, my Garmin, any of that stuff on me. Do not bring do not bring bike tools though in your carry-on because TSA does not like that. Download your Garmin maps for the country you're visiting in advance. They're not on your Garmin, so you have to, it's like, I don't know, $20 on the Garmin website. You pick the country. Actually, it might be all of Europe and download it. Some companies will actually give you Garmins to use for the week, so that's one thing to check. I just added this one today. Bring more clothing than you think you'll need. It sucks if you have a cold snap, heat wave, rain, or whatever, and you don't have the luxury of your entire closet at home. So, I mean, I check the weather forecast to kind of see roughly what I'm expecting, but definitely bring some extra things. Arm warmers were my favorite thing in Portugal because we needed them in the morning and then they came off. So, also bring your own nutrition or hydration unless you know that the tour group will provide and or it's something that you or your stomach will like, right? Because sometimes they don't have brands that you're used to, so you don't necessarily want to spend your week with stomach distress. Um, but like yeah, on the Portugal trip there they didn't have anything. Like on the Tour de France trip, they had a SAG van following us that had water, goo, bars, whatever. So it really just depends.
Can you repeat what you said about Portugal? You said you had on in the morning, you took it off. Was it
Oh,
just
arm warmers.
okay? Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, love the arm warmers. So that's pretty much all I had. I've got, and I can send this to anybody who wants it. This is the link. These are the companies that I have used. So the top four are ones that I have used. The other ones are ones that I have investigated. I actually, Trek Travel was one of the ones I booked and had to cancel. Um, so they got my money without me, but I got reimbursed, so it's no big deal. So and just I would say anything from Duvine down. These are purely my opinions based on the research I've done and a comparison to other things. Like if I had to, well, that's what I did. I put like a one-liner of how I would describe it. Um, that's how I would describe it. So I would think Duvine and Cyclismo are a little more luxury. And after having been on trips, just looking at the cost. having been on trips like similar, what I consider similar trips that cost less, I'm not sure that I know what would justify the additional cost. So for me personally, maybe I'm sure their accommodations are better. Maybe there's more, experiences like wine. We did have wine tastings. We had some experiences like that. So there might be some things that make it cost more. But for me, that's not like what I value. I value like I want to. I mean, like the last hotel we stayed in was super nice. And I was like, oh, this was good. But all the other hotels were fine. Like you're literally not in the room for very much. So as long as it's clean, functional, like some are better than the others, you're like, I like the other hotel better, or whatever. But it's not anything, I don't need anything super fancy. So again, it goes back to what your priorities are and what you value. Um, Backroads has a ton of tours. I think they're another one that also has other types of activities. And I really want to do a bike and beer tour because it sounds like perfect. I think the name kind of describes it. I think they're limited in their locations. It's like Belgium, Netherlands, that type of thing. But those countries are on my kind of next-ish on my mental list. So we'll see. So that's all I had. Happy to chat more now, or if you think of things after, or you want to run anything by me, happy to help.
Anyone have any questions?
This is awesome. Great. Thank you so much. It's very
Yeah.
I love hearing about other people's trips and I'm just curious, have you thought about doing any trips in the US, or have you done them and that's over, or other like Asia? You wondering
No,
about?
so the way that this started, or one of the reasons this started, the solo traveling, is my wife does not fly. She will not
Okay.
fly. I've been trying to get her to fly for 20 some odd years, and I've given up. And so I'm like, if you're fine with me going like for a couple weeks every year, then cool. So the intent is I'm going to do Europe while I'm still working and still have money and vacation time and things like that. And then when we both retire, then we'll travel
US?
the US
Okay, good.
together
Great.
in some kind of vehicle,
Oh,
whether it's
good.
a car or an RV or
Nice.
whatever. That's kind of the plan. So I'm kind of reserving the US for our
Sure.
retirement. So Europe is it. Well, not necessarily just Europe. I think I'd love to go to Australia, but that's just such
Mm.
a long, 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 long flight.
Thank you again very much.
Yeah. All right.